Hello, hello.
Hi everyone.
Hi there. Welcome to Simple Schema if you're joining us. If you're here, put a little note in the chat message down on the right-hand side and let us know where you're joining from. Hello. My name's Mackenzie. This is Zaire, and we'll wait a few minutes to get started here, but we're on the west coast of the United States, if you can't tell from my accent. So I'm in Portland, Oregon. We've got Mark from Lincoln, Nebraska. Hello, my fellow Midwesterner. I'm not sure if that's what we call us. I'm from Wisconsin originally. Hello, Blaine from San Francisco. Hi, Alex. We've got Denver, Colorado, California, Little Rock, Arkansas. How's the weather everywhere? It's really sunny here today in Portland. We're having a beautiful Portland, Oregon sunny day, which is certainly an oxymoron. It's quite rainy here. But spring's coming, or spring's here, I think, almost, and then it'll be summer soon. Thanks for joining us, everyone, to talk about Simple Schema. We'll just give it another couple minutes before we get going. Oh, tornado storms incoming in Arkansas. Okay, stay safe out there. But stay on this call because this is very important. No, I'm kidding. Please stay safe in Arkansas. We've got Utah, Germany, Berlin. I'll be in Berlin next week. Maybe I'll see you there. We'll give it just a couple more moments. Again, thanks for joining us. I'm located in Portland, Oregon, on the West Coast here in the U.S. Zaire's down in San Diego, right?
Yep. Sunny San Diego. It's always a beautiful day here. So
yeah, we could use a Berlin email geek meetup. Okay, I think we'll get going here. Yeah, it never rains in Southern California. Oh, Lithuania. Hello. Okay. All right. We're going to get going here. I'm Mackenzie Wacker, and I have worked with, I've worked on the Beefree SDK customers team here for about a year. So perhaps I've interacted with some of you, and hopefully I've helped you. And Zaire here.
Hey everyone, I'm Zaire. I'm the lead technical writer here at Beefree SDK. I'm on the product engineering team, and I'm excited to be with you all here today and to talk a little bit more about Simple Schema. And like Mackenzie mentioned, I'm located in Southern California in the wonderful city of San Diego.
Yeah. So again, thank you all for joining here. We're going to talk about, if you want to go to the next slide, Zaire, just a couple notes first. So on the right-hand side, you've found the chat box. A lot of you have found the chat box. There is also a questions section down there. It's the tab next to questions. So throughout this, I'm gonna give an introduction to the Simple Schema, talk about the benefits, then I'll pop it over to Zaire for a live demo, and at the end we'll have a Q&A session. So feel free to put your questions down into the question section next to the chat, and we'll save them till the end, and then we'll try to get through as many as we can. But if we don't get through them all, that's okay. This is being recorded, so you will receive the recording of this afterwards. And then if we don't get to your question today, we'll follow up with you individually afterwards. And then we also, we can always email pluginsupport@beefree.io with any further questions as well, if something comes up later. So let's get going. What is the Beefree Simple Schema? Well, let's start with the problem or the challenge that we were having. For years now, we've received many requests from customers asking if you can open up the internal JSON language so that they can generate Beefree compatible content outside of the editor. People have been wanting to more easily and programmatically generate native Beefree JSON without having to enter the editor. So in the last couple years, we've had even more people make this request because they want to train an AI model on the structure of our JSON so the model can appropriately respond to prompts, requesting for content or full templates that match our JSON and can then be uploaded and compatible with the editor. So the challenge here is that the Beefree native JSON is it's way too complex for these tasks. One reason for that is it doesn't just hold the structure of your design, it also powers things like the drag and drop functionality within the editor and so much else. So what we really needed here was a simpler, more streamlined data structure for the AI models and the developers alike to work with more easily. So our team listened and we developed the Simple Schema. So the Simple Schema is a new data structure that is much more simple and streamlined, and it's a versatile version of the Beefree native JSON. It's designed to make that programmatic template creation much more accessible, especially for AI models, which we're going to really get into today. With the Simple Schema, you can now generate full templates or content outside of the visual builder, whether manually or using AI. And if you'd like, you can then use our new simple-to-full schema conversion API to turn your content into the full Beefree JSON schema so that it's also editable in the editor. The key benefit here of the Simple Schema is that it opens that door for AI-powered content generation. So you can train a large language model to create full templates, or a small AI model to handle copy, images, layout separately. So whether you're building templates via code or training generative AI tools, this schema reduces that complexity that is with the Beefree native JSON, and it just really speeds up development. It also significantly enhances custom add-on development, making that easier and more flexible than ever with more properties and simplified schema management. So now we're gonna have Zaire here come on and give us a demo.
All right, thanks so much for that awesome introduction, Mackenzie. And hello, everyone. So for this portion of the presentation, we're going to walk through a live demo. And the best and easiest way for me to do that is to navigate through these different tabs that I have open on my screen right now. So just bear with me as I navigate through the various tabs. If for any reason along the way there's something on my screen that's too tiny, just let me know and I can zoom in further. So that way you all can see what I'm doing. So when we talk about simple schema, one of the first steps we take is to train AI with the simple schema. And in order to really understand what that looks like, I want to go through a few of the resources that we created when we first went live with Simple Schema. One of those resources was this GitHub repository. And I'll actually share the link to this repository here in the chat. That way everyone can access this as I go along for this portion of the presentation. And in this repository, you'll notice that we have many different schemas. So Simple Schema is actually composed of all these various components. So you'll notice that we have the structure for a simple template. We also have a definition schema. And then when we think about how templates are created within Beefree, we have the infrastructure is essentially to create rows. And within rows, so here we have the simple row schema. Within rows, we have columns. We have the simple column schema over here. And then within columns, we have different content blocks and modules. So those options include button, divider, HTML, icons, and so on. So when we talk about training an AI agent, what we're really talking about is taking these files that are included in this repository and using them as a set of instructions for an AI agent to learn off of. So that's step one. Now, let's talk about an example prompt. So when we're prompting AI, we want to make sure that we're very clear on the instructions that we provide it with. That way it leverages the various files that I went over earlier to create valid templates, JSON templates. And the reason why that's important is because we're in our next step, we're going to be making a few API calls. So when we talk about a prompt, here on the screen, I have a few instructions. Here I'm talking about a template that is targeted at dog lovers. And here I'm telling the AI agent to reference this simple template schema, which I pointed out in the repository earlier, and mentioning that this defines the overall structure of the template. So to use it as a reference correctly. And then we all know that sometimes AI can be a little bit creative. Sometimes it has a mind of its own. And we want to make sure that when we're constructing templates, that AI stays on track. So the ways that we provide instructions for AI to stay on track is really important. And I include a few high level bullet points over here that kind of go over that guidance, right? So strictly follow the schemas provided. Those are the ones that we referenced. Do not use any properties that are not explicitly supported. This is just to keep AI on track and make sure it doesn't invent any properties along the way. And then ensure that all required properties are correctly included. And then the final output should be that valid simple template JSON. So this is an example. As you train your own AI models to build these schemas, you're probably going to add many more instructions, but this is just a high level overview for a minimalist type of implementation, which we're going to go over today. So now let's jump into the next step. Okay, we talked about how to train AI, where those schemas are, what an example prompt should look like. Let's talk about what this API call looks like. So in our technical documentation, we actually have an interactive testing environment. And that interactive testing environment, I'll go ahead and navigate to it very quickly over here in this tab. And it's all the way over here. Simple to full. So it's this section of the documentation. It talks about the different requirements for making an API call. And then you can actually test that out over here. If you click test it, it just navigates over to an environment that looks a lot like this. And you'll notice that I already pre-populated some information here, but I'm still going to go over the different components. So the first part is the URL. The endpoint is simple to full JSON. It does require the collection. The collection for this one is conversion. And in order to authenticate, you need to have a bearer token. And you can get that bearer token within the Beefree SDK developer console. And that'll be the token that's associated with like API key. So it'll say API key and you use that and you enter it as a bearer token here. And then we on our doc site, we actually already have an example template that was created using Simple Schema and AI that you can go ahead and test a conversion with if you want to start experimenting. And as we scroll down, we'll notice that body, this request body is only 313 lines long. Now, when we make a request, okay, perfect, and we now get our full Beefree SDK JSON, and we scroll all the way down. I'm still scrolling. So I did scroll past line 313, and I'm still scrolling, almost there. I'll try to speed this up. Okay. So yeah, we're about 1,000 lines over what Simple Schema was. So this touches on the point that Mackenzie made earlier. Right here, 313 lines, that's a very reasonable quantity to train AI off of. AI can keep up with that. But when we're talking about our more complex Beefree JSON that is builder compatible, that is much more difficult to train AI with because of the volume. We're talking about 1,377 lines here compared to 313. That's a very large difference. So that's what makes Simple Schema so easy to use, is that with a simple API call, you can convert that AI generated template into the Beefree SDK compatible JSON that can then be loaded within the builder by end users. So that's how the API call works. If you're interested in experimenting with the APIs, with this API endpoint in particular, you can check out the documentation. It'll navigate you to the same exact environment. The only thing you'll need to add is your own bearer token and make sure that you set the collection to conversion. All right, so now that we've gone over the simple schema files, the example prompt, and how the API call works, now we can go ahead and jump into scenario one. So in this repository, you'll notice that I included this folder called Simple Schema Concept. And in this folder, we have an example scenario of how you can implement Simple Schema for your end users and how to create an AI-driven content creation experience for them uh, using this folder as kind of an inspirational guide. It's very minimalist, bare bones, but it does the job in terms of providing that inspirational aspect. So let's take a visual look at all of this. I'm going to open my demo environment very quickly. So I have this. Okay, awesome. So here's a very simple experience that I've created, and you can see on the front end, this looks like an application. I built all of this, so it's all just additional add-ons. And here, you'll notice that there is this rectangle that says use AI to build your first design. So I'm an end user. I'm going to go ahead and click this button, and I see AI email design assistance. This is again just an inspirational pop-up, and it's asking me to describe my email design, and it provides me with a few tips for the best results. So here I'm going to go ahead and write a prompt, something like provide me with a compelling email that follows email best practices defined by the greatest marketers of all time. The products should be from my product offering. And now I'm just going to wrap this up and include the tech line of products. All set. So that's good to go. I click generate. And now as an end user, I'm seeing this confirmation message. Again, this is all the part of the experience that I created. And then I click customize my new email, and I'm redirected to the Beefree SDK builder. And now I have this template that was created programmatically, automatically loaded within the builder. And as an end user, I can start editing it. So I can see that all of these modules are clickable, they're editable. I can add text within there. And I can also, let's say I want to add some, additional modules, I can also do that. So let's talk a little bit about what happened. When I, as the end user, clicked or submitted my prompt, that prompt was sent to the backend and used as context for the simple schema to be generated. And then that generated simple schema based off of the prompt that what the end user submitted is then sent over to the API endpoint. the API endpoint creates this template, and then this template loads within the builder, and the end user is redirected to that. So this is scenario one, and I'll go through one more scenario. And before I jump into that second scenario, I want to take you to DeepSeek, where I had a quick and brief conversation with DeepSeek about creating not just one template, but three templates for me all at once. And the reason why I want to get into this is because this concept touches upon how you can create multiple versions of a template and then allow your end users to select which version works best for them and their needs. And then you can create a scenario in which you can actually gather more information about your end users and their preferences based on providing them with multiple options. So I attached my files. These all came from the GitHub repository. DeepSeek in this chat has like a 10 file limit, so I couldn't actually attach more than 10 files. So I pasted the last three. That's why in the prompt you'll see that I've attached and pasted the different schemas within here, within this message. And then I provided it with the prompt guidelines that I mentioned in the presentation, in this portion, in the example prompt. And then from there, I went on to describe the scenario. So I mentioned that this is for dog lovers. It should include these different color preferences for each template, and then it should remain consistent with these essential products, though. So I go on to provide it with all of those instructions, and then it starts generating these templates. So now let's take a look at what that looked like as the final result. So over here. Okay, so now this is the new version, the new environment that shows three versions of an email design based on an end user's one prompt. So I click here, I provide the same prompt. I want to, well, a different prompt in this scenario. I want to make a email campaign or an email campaign for dog lovers advertising my products. And then here I click generate. Excuse me. And now I have three different versions here. And at a glance, you can see that this one is a little bit slightly darker blue. This one's a lighter blue in the background, and this one has gray background. And if you're wondering how I was able to generate these images, I was able to do that using the /HTML and /image endpoints, which brought these images into this portion. So it's really using the Simple Schema endpoint, the HTML endpoint, and then also the image endpoint, which you can learn more about in our technical documentation. So I'm just going to click on version 1 as the end user, and now I'm redirected to this template. And you'll notice here that I'm redirected to an email. It includes the images that I included in my prompt. It includes the different products that I wanted to advertise. And while it's not a perfect design, it's something that you can absolutely iterate upon as you create more sophisticated prompts on your backend. And now as the end user, because I selected this template 1, you've also learned more about my design preferences, and you can use that information to create future simple schemas that are then converted into other assets. All right, so that's scenario 2. And that concludes this portion of the presentation with the demo. I'll go ahead and toss it back over to Mackenzie, and we can open it up for Q&A.
Well, thanks, Sayer. That was fantastic. That was great. Yeah, just a reminder, there is a question tab down in the bottom right-hand corner. I see there's a couple in there right now. So if you do have a question, please throw it in there. So first of all, will the slides be made available to us later? This has been recorded, and we are going to share that recording with everybody who has signed up today. So if you really would like the slides, please reach out and we can get you those as well. But they are in the recording, and we think that's kind of the most important part. So we have a question. What happens if I hit start live answer? So the question, can the simple schema be used for building landing pages as well? So
Yes, it can. You have to define the type inside of the template when you make your API call. And that type field, you can set it to pop-up, email, or landing page. Or not landing page, just page. But you can set it to either of those three, and then it'll go from there.
Great. And then, okay, so Jeff is asking, I know the simple schema is recommended for programmatically creating templates, but is there a specification available for the full schema as well? I'm not sure if I completely grasp the question, Zaire. Are you understanding the question here?
I think they might be talking about the full Beefree SDK native JSON. If that's not the case, just let me know. But
yeah, please clarify in the chat if we're not answering the question correctly.
But right now we have a simple schema, and then we'll also have a few next week. We'll also have HTML importer, which will allow you to use the HTML route and convert that to Beefree SDK native JSON. So really, either of those two options are the ones that we currently have available.
So yeah, so there's an endpoint that you can have use the simple schema and then hit the endpoint to convert it into that full native Beefree JSON. If that is the correct question that we are answering. I don't see anything in the chat, so I think we got it. Great. Okay, let's see here. What else do we have?
I did see someone ask a question about the prompt that I used, the example prompt. So I can share the full. Actually, in the repository, I have the example for the technical products. The full simple schema is included in there before making the API call, but I don't have the prompt in there, but I can actually share the prompt. And when it comes to creating the prompt, I find it helpful to include not just referencing the schema files, but also including a portion on how to resolve errors if any like validation errors occur throughout the API call, and ensure that you train your AI model on how to handle those and how to resolve those. And we actually give pretty decent feedback. So if you do want to experiment with maybe a not valid um, a simple schema in the body of the post request and actually take a quick look at the feedback provided when the validation doesn't complete successfully, that was also really helpful for training the AI model. I would recommend that.
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense for us to put the sample prompt into the docs, so we'll take a note of that. Sayer, I'm not sure if you just answered this. What about the elements that are not documented in simple schema docs, like forms for pages?
Oh yeah, so that's a question. We actually have a separate GitHub repository for forms. I can share the schema you can use to validate forms, but that does exist in a separate repository. But I'll share it in the chat right now. That way, whoever asked that question also has access to that schema, the form validation schema.
Great. Oh, good. We've got some thumbs up. I am new to Livestorm. That's the platform we're on. Okay, let's see. We have I am just looking over any plans for moving these changes to production. If you could kind of, I'm not sure, Zaire, if you know what this person's talking about, but moving these changes to production. Oh, the timeline for the simple schema. We are live with the simple schema. Correct, Zaire?
Yep. Yeah, we're already live with Simple Schema, so you can start using it today.
Mm-hmm.
And the endpoint. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. We've got a few more. This is great. I'm really happy about all the questions. Let's see, will we have need to convert old email JSON from our own schema into Beefree compatible JSON? So am I correct in assuming this would be a good workflow for that? Our JSON to simple schema JSON to Beefree native JSON. Yeah, I think that sounds like a good workflow. We also are about to release we're about to release on May 7th an HTML to Beefree JSON converter, which is very exciting. That's something different, but also that a lot of people have been asking about. So that's not your native JSON. However, if you had HTML that you wanted to convert to the Beefree native JSON, that's just about possible. So we're excited about that. But yes, I think that this is a good workflow. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. We've got, is there documentation that our development team can refer to with some examples for a person who is new to the Beefree API? Yes.
Yep. I'll share that link in the chat right now. I'll include our GitHub URL. We have an example repository, and then I'll also include the technical documentation. And on the technical documentation, you can actually test all of our endpoints.
Okay, so have you tested with other models other than DeepSeek? And if so, how have the results varied?
Yes. So actually, one of the developers on our team used GitHub Copilot, and it was in the same format too. So it was just a chat, and they uploaded the schema files and then used a similar prompt. And it did generate the simple schema template, and the results were they worked pretty well. And even if it doesn't work on that first try, again, with just a little bit of feedback from the um, from the API call results, it'll give you error validation feedback. Just by applying that, usually it gets it on the second try too. So it's really, really impressive and works very quickly.
Yeah, and just keep in mind there's a little bit of training involved, but this is completely different than first attempts with the native JSON, Beefree JSON here. So this should really be a really great tool. Okay, can we set up anything to import JavaScript as well into JSON as a complement of HTML? I'm talking about pages, not email. Yeah, so the native Beefree JSON is actually it's kind of compatible between builders. So you could actually build an email template in the editor and then take that JSON and put it into the page builder. And it would then, upon saving, generate HTML for the web. So it's compatible between the builders. Therefore, if you are converting that into the Beefree JSON, it's compatible across. Zaire, any other notes on the simple schema page versus email?
I would recommend checking out the documentation to get all the very the more granular level details on that, so that way you can ensure that you're setting everything up correctly. But there's a few instructions in there that I recommend following. I'll share a link right now in the chat to that specific section, which includes those more granular level instructions for folks.
And in the email following this presentation, we'll include all relevant links as well. So if you're not grabbing them from the chat, don't worry about it. We're recording, and we will share in the follow-up email. So is it possible to use the full schema programmatically to implement own transformations like full schema to some other format for the spec needed? So it has to be stable. Is that the...
So I think, and the individual who asked this, feel free to correct me if you were asking something else. But we do have a group of endpoints that are available in our content services API that actually takes the Beefree native JSON and converts it into other formats. And those formats can be HTML. It can transform the Beefree JSON to an image, but that's using the HTML importer too. Not importer, the HTML endpoint too. And then also you can also export other formats like PDF. So we have a variety of different formats that you can use that are available under the Content Services API section of the documentation, where you can transform Beefree JSON into a lot of other things. We even have an AI collection for converting them to SMS, metadata, or also summaries. So yeah.
Great. Okay, I see one more question in here so far. How does the simple schema work with saved rows? Is it just another property in the JSON like everything else?
Yeah, I mean, we have a simple schema section of, because really what would the workflow, the way that it would look like is that you create the simple schema template. The simple schema is converted to the Beefree full JSON, and then folks can interact on the front end with that content and save rows from there. That's one pathway. There's also the custom add-ons where you can create a custom row type, and that works a little bit differently. We won't cover that in this particular session, but I do know that we'll have future sessions touching on custom add-ons. So we can jump into that other scenario a little bit more there. And we do have some resources on that in the custom add-on section of our documentation too. And you can also reach out to us at the email that Mackenzie mentioned. What was it again, Mackenzie?
Yeah, plugin support at beefree.io is always a great way to, tell us anything. Reach out with questions. Let's see here. I think I don't see any more questions. Oh, here we go. Great. Is there documentation that talks more specifically about the details of training the AI model on simple schema? This is going to kind of depend on the AI model a little bit as well. So, we really kind of leave it to you to pick the AI model that works best for you. Experiment a bit if need be. Zaire, any other thoughts? We did mention that we would share I think we were talking just a few minutes ago about including the prompt that we used in the documentation. I think that's a great idea. So I
Right.
think we'll put our sample prompt into the docs, and then we can add in some additional notes on what we did there. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we can absolutely include some inspirational aspects to the documentation, but it really depends on the model, like Mackenzie mentioned, and then also the documentation of whichever provider you decide to use and their own best practices and um, and stuff like that. But we'll definitely include the inspirational portion on our end so you can see how we did it.
Okay, let's see here. We have maybe a clarifying question. Let's see here. If I'd like to implement a custom transformation, is the full schema stable enough for example, having a public spec, or is it just an internal JSON? Hmm.
I mean, that's something that we'll probably want to touch base with our team on. I would recommend that um, Hari, reach out to us at the email that Mackenzie provided, pluginsupport at beefree.io, so that way we can follow up. We probably want to touch base with our internal team on this one to make sure we give you the best answer for your use case.
We'll take a note. We'll bring it to our team, and then we can reach out to you about this. Yeah. Um, yep, that sounds good. Okay, I think we have some more. Let's see here. Regarding the HTML to Beefree JSON workflow mentioned earlier, could you speak to any expected data loss between the two formats? In other words, is it possible to fully represent an HTML document in Beefree JSON? This is something that we'll follow up with you afterwards on this, but yes, we have great success with converting the HTML to the Beefree JSON, and then you can use it in the editor to edit a little bit as needed. It's kind of case by case, so we can follow up with you on that. Okay. Oh, I think the same question was put into both chats. So thank you for making sure that got over there. I believe we just answered this one. Yep. If I want to implement a custom of my own, is the full schema stable enough? Yeah. So we'll get back to you on that one. We'll reach out to you. Okay. I don't see any more questions, but we won't end this quite yet. We'll just wait a few minutes here and see if anything comes to mind for anyone. And the full schema, so the full schema, if we're talking about the native Beefree JSON, that full schema it's not available to be completely opened up for public use. That's why we have the new endpoints to get that in return. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Thank you. Thank you, Abdul. Thanks so much. We appreciate you're here. I had a question regarding image handling. How will images generated using AI be managed? I
Yeah,
believe it depends on your storage, your file manager and storage system, right?
yeah, I was going to mention too that end users can also provide the URLs to their images in their prompts if they're talking about adding specific images to their design, or if they're looking for just like an inspirational image placeholder, then that placeholder will appear in the final output, and then they can add their image URL later on, or they can upload images once they're in the builder to the using the file manager, or I mean, there's really a lot of flexibility. But in terms of the initial prompt, they can either direct mention like, hey, I already have some images that I work with, and I know that I want to use them in this design, or they can just ask for an image placeholder. And even if they don't ask, that image placeholder will appear because it'll pick up that an image should go there. There's a few other ways outside of those two scenarios that you can also experiment with that, but those are the two that I used for this demo. But there's other ways to get more creative and customized with that based on how you train your AI model.
And how you prompt it. That's great. That's great clarification, Zaire. Thank you. Okay, and thanks for that question. Great question. All right. I see someone typing. Perhaps we'll have another question here. But yeah, thanks so much for joining, everybody. We really appreciate it. And we're really excited to just see what you do with this. We're always excited we love to hear feedback of how you're customizing the SDK in general. But as the key benefit here of Simple Schema is that it opens the door for AI powered content generation. We're really excited to see what you do with that. And please, if you're proud of it or you're excited about it, or if it's going terrible, please reach out. Send us an email, contact your CSM, find me on LinkedIn. We appreciate any and all feedback.